The rain began as a whisper against the windshield, soft and rhythmic, but as I drove further from the city, it turned into a relentless drum, hammering down on the old metal roof of my sedan. The wipers fought to keep pace, smearing the drops across the glass in streaks that distorted the world into grey, shifting shapes. The road twisted between gnarled trees, their branches clawing at the sky, and every mile seemed to push me deeper into a land that time had forgotten. I had inherited the house from my uncle, a man whose name I barely remembered and whose existence had been nothing more than a shadow in family stories. He had lived alone, a recluse, and now his will had passed the estate to me. I hadn't known what I expected, perhaps a modest cottage, maybe a crumbling farmhouse, but nothing could have prepared me for this. At the top of a hill, shrouded by mist and rain, the house appeared. It seemed to rise from the earth itself, a fortress of dark stone and timber, sprawling across the knoll as though it had always belonged there. The roof was crowned with iron spires that pierced the low-hanging clouds, and the windows, though dirty and cracked, glimmered faintly in the storm. Half the shutters hung loose, swaying and clattering in the wind, and ivy crawled up the walls like veins reaching for the sky. The car lurched to a stop at the foot of the driveway. Mud clung to my boots as I stepped out, and the air was thick with the scent of wet earth, moss and something sour I couldn't identify metallic, almost like rust mixed with blood. The wind tugged at my coat and hair, carrying with it a whisper of leaves and something darker, something that felt alive. I approached the house cautiously, each footstep muffled against the gravel. The front door was slightly ajar, moving in a slow, rhythmic sway that seemed too purposeful to be caused by the storm alone. I pushed it open with a firm hand, and it groaned, protesting after years of disuse. Inside, the foyer stretched wide, its ceilings impossibly high, fading into shadows that the stormlight barely touched. Dust lay in thick layers over every surface, and the air smelled of decay and mildew. A grand staircase spiraled upward, the carved banisters decorated with twisting vines and faces too worn to recognize. Faded portraits hung along the walls, eyes glinting faintly, as though wet, following me with unblinking stare. On a small table near the entrance sat a folder. The lawyer had left it for me. Inside were the will, the deed, and a small note in handwriting so jagged it made my eyes hurt to read. The house is yours now, but do not stay past the first month. Do not sleep in the east wing, and if you hear doors opening at night, do not look for them. There was no signature, no indication of who had written it, just the ominous warning. I laughed softly, a short bark of amusement that sounded hollow in the cavernous room. Old men and their superstitions, I told myself. Yet, when I slipped the papers into my pocket, a tiny shiver crawled up my spine. I began my exploration of the first floor. The rooms were vast and numerous, like a labyrinth designed to confuse or impress. The dining hall could seat 20. Though the table was covered in a thick layer of dust, streaked with grey fingerprints that suggested the passage of someone or something recently. The library was filled with books that sagged on their shelves, spines cracked, leather curling, pages yellowed with age. The drawing room had leather chairs cracked and split from years of neglect, and the fireplace was blackened with soot. Cobwebs hung like curtains in corners, swaying faintly as if stirred by invisible hands. Upstairs, the bedrooms were mostly identical. High ceilings, four-poster beds draped in moth-eaten sheets, and windows partially covered with heavy curtains that had lost their color and weight over time. One room smelled faintly of rot, another of dust and dry mold. In the west wing, I discovered a wardrobe filled with clothing from another century. Waistcoats, laced dresses, gloves, and hats all preserved in a state that suggested someone had abandoned them in haste. yet the fibers crumbled at my touch. The third floor, I noticed, was locked. No key on the ring fit the doors, and each handle resisted my attempts. I didn't press it further. Curiosity gnawed at me. Yes, but there was also the faint echo of warning in my uncle's note. That first night, I chose a bedroom in the west wing and lit a fire in the hearth. The storm raged outside, battering the windows and sending tremors through the floorboards. Lightning flashed, illuminating the room in hush white light for brief moments, casting grotesque shadows of the furniture against the walls. Sleep came fitfully, each crack and groan of the old house stretching longer than it should. And then I heard it, a door opening somewhere down the hall. Not my own. The hinges groaned, followed by the soft click of wood meeting wood again. My chest tightened, and I froze in the bed, straining to hear. Footsteps moved away from me slow, deliberate, measured. Not the erratic shuffle of a human who had lost balance, nor the casual creak of a settling house. No, these steps had intention, purpose. They were walking, yes, but also watching. I remembered the note. Do not look for them. I stayed perfectly still, pretending to sleep. Even as the hair on my arms bristled and my heart hammered against my ribs, I convinced myself it was nothing, a draft, the storm, my imagination, eventually. Exhaustion dragged me into uneasy dreams. In my sleep, the house transformed. Hallways stretched endlessly. Doors appeared where walls had been. Rooms shifted and rearranged as if the house itself were breathing. Some rooms smelled of rot and decay, others of perfume and smoke from a life long past. Shadows moved just beyond the reach of my eyes, teasing me, whispering my name in voices too soft to catch. When I woke, the world had shifted. At the end of the hall, where the wall had been blank yesterday, there was now a door. Its wood was pristine, the brass handle polished, gleaming in the morning light that filtered through the dusty windows. Dust covered the floor all round, except the threshold, which seemed freshly walked. I approached it slowly, hand trembling, and rested my palm against the smooth wood. It was colder than I expected. Behind the door, the house was silent, but I felt it, a pulse. Not a heartbeat, but something that moved, something aware. I stepped back. The door remained closed. All day, the house seemed to watch me. The shadows lingered longer than they should. The air shifted when I moved from room to room. When I tried to take notes or sketch the layout, the lines on the page blurred as if the pencil refused to stay in place. And that night, when I lit the fire again, I swore I could hear doors creaking softly in the distance, opening and closing just beyond my line of sight. The storm returned, harder than the night before. Rain sluiced against the windows, and lightning painted the halls in white light that stretched shadows into grotesque shapes. I lay in bed, listening. The house groaned, whispered, and occasionally sighed. And then, once again, I heard the footsteps. Closer this time. My heart leapt into my throat. They stopped outside the bedroom door, and I held my breath, paralyzed. The handle rattled faintly, then fell silent. I waited, every nerve screaming, until I convinced myself I had imagined it. But morning proved otherwise. At the end of the hallway, where yesterday had been empty wall, the newly appeared door was ajar. A faint draught of cold air slipped from it, carrying a smell I could not place. Earth and metal, ash and rust. I stared at it, frozen. Some part of me knew I should not open it. Some part of me ached with the curiosity that had always defined me. And in that instant, the house seemed to pulse, as if it were aware of my hesitation. The house was alive, and it had just added a new room.